Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. A long-time Disney animated film director has come out and slammed Disney for political messaging. In fact, has gone so far as to say, hey, you need a massive course correction on this, away from political messaging. Now, I'm not, blind to the fact that we have been saying this stuff here for some time, right? Here on channels like this, we say it quite often. It's pretty obvious. Anyone who says that this is the wrong sort of approach that Disney needs to go, or they're not being political, you're gaslighting everyone. We can all see it with our own eyes, but it's amazing to see it on the likes of Variety, because when we say stuff like this, we get called right-wing, the far right, grifters, blah 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 blah. Now Variety is quite literally platforming these viewpoints. Interesting how the tide is turning, isn't it? So hit subscribe if you're new here. If you enjoy videos such as this, please do turn those bell notifications on and check you are in fact subscribed, because a whole bunch of people have been unsubscribed recently. I will say as well, if you like what I do here and you're a long time subscriber, or even just enjoy briefly my content, please do support further via Patreon, which is linked in the description box, because YouTube does demonetize channels. It does demonetize my channel, and you can help via Patreon for as little as $2 a month, which is less than a coffee, because coffee is extortionate now. But anyway, these kind of ideas are great. Like, this is obvious. And I've got to say a massive shout out to the Movie Nerd over on Twitter, who shared this with me. So thank you so much, the Movie Nerd. Do appreciate that. And follow me over on Twitter at Mr8Reviews. But let's take a look, right? So animated filmmaker John Musker, who directed such Disney films as The Little Mermaid and Aladdin and Hercules, called out the Walt Disney Company for prioritizing political messaging over stories in its recent films, which is again completely true. To anyone with eyes, anyone who says otherwise, they are literally gaslighting you, and they are your enemy, because why are you gaslighting someone away from the obvious unless you are an enemy? Like, why? So he said this, and quote, "I think they need to do a course correction a bit in terms of putting the message secondary behind entertainment and compelling story and engaging characters." And he said this to Spanish outlet El Pay, or yeah, I think that's Pay, at this year's Animeo International Summit in Gran Canaria, Spain. Now again, this is not, it's fine to have messaging. It really is fine to have messaging. A lot of films have messaging. A lot of films are allegories for certain things, right? And some of them can work very, very well. In fact, it's a good way to, sort of change people's viewpoints on certain bits and pieces here and there via really good storytelling and having a message secondary, or even thirdly. There's no issue having messages. I mean, some of these messages, obviously, they're issues, right? Like, obviously, okay? I'm not blind to that either. But some messaging, certain messages, yeah, fine. Like, that's fine, right? I don't think people should be racist, for instance, right? Like, obviously. I think it's okay to tell stories where, the message is, hey, don't be racist. Like, that's fine, I think. Stories about, chopping up little kids' dicks and stuff like that and making them women, probably not good. But anyway, so he says the following, and quote, "The classic Disney films didn't start out trying to have a message. They wanted you to get involved in the characters and the story and the world." And I think that's still the heart of it. You don't have to exclude agendas, which is true, you don't. Obviously, pick and choose your battles, though. But you have to first create characters who you sympathise with and who are compelling. Again, don't disagree with any of that. So Musker has collaborated with fellow directors Ron Clements on several Disney animated features, including The Great Mouse Detective, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Treasure Planet, and Moana. Musker and Clements also helmed 2009's The Princess and the Frog, which has met with mixed reception over the depiction of Disney's first black princess. And he says the following, "We weren't trying to be woke, although I understand the criticism," Musker said, of The Princess and the Frog. Elsewhere in the interview, the animated filmmaker shares his thoughts on Disney's live-action remakes. "Companies are always like, how do we reduce our risk?" Which they really need to get away from. I understand companies are risk-averse, but my God. There's risk-averse and then there's just being creatively bankrupt. So And he says, we'll just do it again and sell it to them in a different form. Or they think, well, we could make it better. He specifically criticised the 2023 live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid, saying, and quote, they didn't play up the father-daughter story, and that was the heart of the movie, in a way. And the crab. You could look at live animals in a zoo, and they have more expression. Like with The Lion King. That's one of the basic things about Disney, is the appeal, he continued. That's what animation does best. I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong at all. But again, a few key points here. As I said, I mean, noting about remakes and sort of repackaging things and reducing risk. I've said this for a long, long time. A lot of this is just repeating what we have said many, 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 many times. Many, many times. But that Little Mermaid film was a travesty. That lost so much money for Disney. Absolute travesty. And comments on stuff like this. You know, this is a long-time director. Someone who did The Great Mouse Detective, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Hercules, Treasure Planet, and Moana. So he's recent. You know, and 2009's The Princess and the Frog. This is a recent director. Absolutely going to town on Disney here. Lay off the messaging is essentially the argument here. Lay off the messaging, lay off the agenda. You have to write good stories first that people can get engrossed in and get swept up in. And then you think about whatever story it is and message that they're trying to tell, after the fact. Right? But when your primary focus is, right, this is the current thing, let's tell a story about this, not let's create these really good characters and this good story. It's just we need to jump on the BLM bandwagon. We need to jump on, I don't know, swapping out another ginger for a black person, because that seems to be the thing that they always bloody do nowadays. That's going to ruin a story, isn't it? Let's be honest. That's the focus. So I do like this. Again, this is nothing new, but again, fascinating to see. Variety famously did that big expose on Disney, Marvel, specifically Bob Iger said, hey, this is someone who was in charge all along under Bob Chapek, etc., etc. So yeah, I like Variety. I like the cut of their jib, as it were. I like the fact that they keep platforming these kind of comments, or at least, at some points even writing their own exposés. And this is the turning of the tide. I think it will get worse before it gets better, but we are definitely seeing an influx of these kind of comments going mainstream, and that's good. That's good. This is nothing to be frowned upon. This is great. So yeah, leave your thoughts down below. Would love to hear your thoughts. So drop them down below in the comment section if you're new here. Like I said at the start, do hit subscribe, and support via Patreon or buy some merch. I've got a merch store, mr8shop.com. Anyway, cheers guys. Take care. Bye bye now.